Holy shike, let's talk about pigs. Here's your host of the Pork Podcast, Jennifer Shike.
There's just something about the story behind the story. And as a storyteller, I'm always searching for ways to give readers just a little bit more. And that's what the Pork Podcast is all about, bringing you stories of the people and the progress of the pork industry. I'm Jennifer Shike. Let's go find just a little bit more. A love for family and farming drive Todd Wiley of Walker, Iowa, to do what he does every day. Although he and his wife Denise would be honored to have their 4 children come back to take over their farming operation, they are quick to let them know that they don't have to. Over the years, Todd has developed a unique exercise to guide his family through the complicated process of succession planning. So it's my honor today to welcome Todd to the Pork Podcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I know you've had a busy day. Were you loading hogs up today?
Moving feeder pigs earlier today. Yep.
Moving feeder pigs. So I appreciate you squeezing us into your afternoon. I loved hearing about your story when we talked earlier, and I've heard a lot of great things from people in the industry about what you're doing with your farming operation and how you are working to make sure that the next generation has a future in agriculture. And so I'd like to kind of kick this off by starting off learning a little bit more about the background of Interstate Swine LLC and how it came to be.
Interstate Swine was actually formed in 1998. And if you recall, 1998 wasn't exactly a great year to be in pig production. I'm actually an Iowa State graduate from 91. I worked in genetic sales for a couple of years after that. And then Denise and I actually started Custom Genes, which is Genes. It was a custom collect boar stud that we ran. During that time, I also worked for my father. So I was an employee of his on his diversified operation. And I was wanting to have ownership, specifically in the pig component of his business. And so finally, by 1998, we were able to start Interstate Swine LLC. We were 50-50 partners, and I was actually the managing partner from the beginning.
Did you always think you would come back to the farm? Did you have any other career aspirations along the way?
You know, it was a natural thing for me to come back and be involved in operations and production. I was in sales for 2 years. I knew going into that I really didn't see that as a career. But I also knew that everything has to be sold, right? Whether it's a product or an idea or a concept, you have to be able to lead and bring people along. And so that was most of the reason that I spent 2 years of my life in that capacity. But yeah, my heart's always kind of been in production.
Well, I mean, you point out that you started your business at a very challenging time in our industry. And as I think back, I was kind of in college myself and thinking about where I wanted to go in animal agriculture. And there were certainly a lot of question marks in the air during that time period. How did that time, I'll just put it that way, impact you? How did the time of 1998 impact how your operation started off, but also the mentality that you think you've had since you've really got that business going?
We had already set up Interstate Swine, so we were pretty well committed. And Denise and I had bought a couple hundred gilts and some boars to go with them to blend in with my dad's herd at the time. And our intention was actually to sell wean pigs or to sell half of the production to my father because he still had finishing capacity that he needed to utilize, and then sell the other half of the production as wean pigs. In 1998, we started farrowing sows the same week, or from our expansion or from our partnership. We started farrowing those sows in December, the same week that pigs were at 8 cents per pound. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, if this is how it's going to be, it's not going to take too long to wash me out of this business. There was no opportunity to sell wean pigs because nobody wanted them, but there were opportunities to access some facilities locally. And so that's really where my emphasis and we decided that was really about our only option, which was what we intended to do longer term anyway. It just kind of pushed us into that a little quicker than we were, I guess, envisioning at the time. It worked out fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how did you, what Tell me about the roles when you guys were starting things off. What were kind of your responsibilities, and where did Denise come in? Kind of how did you balance that load together?
So Denise was employed actually off the farm and had been up until just a few years ago. She worked for Iowa State Extension for a period of time, and then she worked once our kids were in school, all in school. She was employed by our school district, and so a lot of what went on early on, especially, was my dad and I, and as the managing partner, a lot of those decisions actually kind of rested upon me. Now, bear in mind, my dad enjoyed crop farming and he enjoyed cattle feeding. He had pigs out of almost necessity for cash flow. He understood the value of turning dollars quickly, and his pig enterprise allowed him to do that. And so, from early on, it was uh, just opportunities as they came about. We'd evaluate, have a look, figure out how they fit, and a lot of times we utilized them, at least for a period of time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you were carrying a lot on your shoulders during that time. And as I look at pig farmers, I just think they're some of the most resilient people I know, because there's definitely a lot of things that are easier to do out there than raise pigs, especially with the markets that we've had. Just most recently too. What do you think it is about raising pigs that's made you want to stay and be a pig farmer all of these years later?
I've always had a natural tendency towards pigs. I mean, I like them. They're smart. They're efficient. They're productive. There's just a lot of things about them. And honestly, I could not be a cowboy because I don't like to be out in the cold weather. And so the modern production of pigs suits me pretty well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Um, well, one of my things that I always do before I get these podcasts going is I like to reach out to people in the industry who have worked with you or who know you well to just learn a little bit more about you. Because part of what we're trying to do here on the Pork Podcast is to find the story behind the story. And so I wanted to queue up Pat McGonigal, CEO of the Iowa Pork Producers Association, and share a few thoughts from him right now.
He's a great leader, has a lot of skills that we look for in leadership. And I think he, first of all, takes care of pork production. That's key to him. The other part about Todd that I think is wonderful to watch is his local involvement. He's been involved in many organizations locally, and that's always a sign of somebody that has good stead with their neighbors and family close. The other part of I've watched him for the pork organization. He's challenged us, which is a good thing, and brought up ideas and concepts that as an organization we need to embrace.
When I was listening to him speak, one of the things that he said really stood out to me is that you aren't afraid to basically share your voice and to share some things that you think are important. I think when I think about the organizations that I've been involved in, um, there are the doers and there are just the people that are in it a lot of times. And so I think it's easy to sit back and not really speak up or say what's on your mind, and to just be and not really take an active role in an organization. And so why do you think it's so important to not only, be a member of these organizations, but also to have a way to share your ideas and embrace the opportunity that you have to be a voice in that organization?
I think it comes down to leadership. And, I was on the Iowa Pork Producer Board 20 plus years ago, and actually was pretty intentional since then about being active and being a leader locally, not only in pork producers, but also school board, county supervisor, and other 4-H FFA things that are important to our family and important to our community. But when it comes to the pork industry, I think sometimes you got to ask questions that are hard, but you got to ask them in a way so as not to put people off, because there certainly is an opportunity to offend people. But if you can develop the idea, and it kind of comes back to the 2 years of sales that I had, if you can develop an idea and bring people along and explain where you're coming from, they may not agree with you, but at least they can respect the line of thinking and receive that message a little better.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm sure that's something that holds true, working in a family operation too. There's value in everybody's voice. And if you just, only listen to yourself, you'll end up one place. But if you really take some of the best from all of the people that are in that group, you can go a lot further. And I'm curious, if can you think of an organization or a memory that you may have of how the joint idea was better than just maybe one person on their own?
Even in our own business, I have a number of long-term employees, and they're not afraid to challenge me. They're not afraid to offer up suggestions because, sometimes my days get so cluttered up in my own little world. It's not unusual for them to, especially then in my feed mill, to come with me with an idea or something we could do that would make us better. And I'm like, holy cow, that seems pretty obvious, but it's in his world. And, I don't deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So it's really nice when you have employees who are that in tune with your family and your business and who are willing to ask the question. It's good.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. What do you think holds back? I mean, I think that's probably something that you only earn through time together, but what do you think holds back maybe people on a team from sharing their ideas maybe on the farm in a farm setting?
That's interesting. And this is probably segue right into more of our discussion. But I know my children, when they come home to be employees of ours, they have trouble maybe getting past the father-son relationship to the employer-employee relationship. And that would be the case with my daughter as well. And so they need to have enough confidence. They need to have enough experience. And the only way you get that is to question things on occasion and then discover it's like, wow, that was a good idea. My dad doesn't have all the answers. Well, that's for sure.
I love that. Well, let's get into that. I'm going to cue up Pat one more time because I really think he opens up this next part of our conversation so well. So here's what Pat has to say about you.
There's no doubt that family is important to Todd. In fact, it's very, very important to him. And that's the other part that I admire about him. It's been fun to watch as he really puts family first and the farm is a part of that discussion, but has really managed the people that are part and his family members that are part of that farm in a real professional way, but also with an eye towards the legacy that he wants to leave. He and Denise want to leave on their farm.
So I know legacy is very important to you. I think that this whole topic of the generational transfer of our farms is a really important one, and one that, quite frankly, is tough to discuss sometimes because everybody's got different family members. Everybody approaches it differently. I really get interested to listen to people talk about it because, I've got our family operation, but then also my husband's. And I just think of how different those two planning processes have been. And then you enter in all these other discussions. I think you've got some really cool ideas going. But before we get into like how you're approaching succession planning, let's start off by introduce us to your family. Tell us a little bit about your family members.
Sure. So we have 4 children. They are roughly 2 years apart. Drew is the oldest one. He was actually a Kansas State University graduate. Isaac is a graduate of Iowa State University in agribusiness. He's actually employed with EverAg, and he houses out of our office. So he works remotely. He works in our office, and that's really nice from our standpoint because when he's doing his day job, then he's available for us for a few hours each day if we need him to step in. Our daughter is Emma, so she's third in line, and she was a DMAC student. She is very creative, very gifted. She's a florist, actually. And so if you call her phone number, you'll get something to the effect of, hello, this is Emma Wiley, owner of Auntie M's and Fourth Gen Hogs, which is a kind of a unique combination. But she has really embraced pork production. I never in my wildest dreams expected that when she was in high school. And our youngest son is Joshua. He's a junior at Iowa State University in animal science.
Awesome. Well, they all sound very incredible, and it'll be fun to kind of dig into a little bit more about how you guys all work together here in a bit. But as you were kind of going out, when was the first time that you really started thinking about the what's next of your farm? When did you essentially begin succession planning?
Well, we were blessed as I had two brothers in our family, and we were blessed because my parents talked about succession planning, and they talked about their estate plan, and they talked about the future from even when I was in high school, right? So a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And they're still with us, fortunately. Dad's in a care center and Mom still lives at home. And so actually we have yet to execute on their estate plan. So this sort of thing isn't new to our family. And basically when we started Interstate Swine, we needed to hire employees. And so one of the things that I was pretty cognizant of or conscientious about when I started Interstate Swine and offering positions of employment for other people, I wanted to make sure that the employment opportunity within our farm business, even then, before we had children, would be conducive to my children filling those roles or our children filling those roles. And so like a health insurance plan, matching IRA funds, paid time off, paid vacation, those types of things that employees typically look for, it seemed appropriate to me to set up a business that, would this be good for my kids? Was really the question that needed to be asked at the beginning. And so we did it with that in mind. And, from then on, we've talked we have family meetings fairly routinely. We talk about what's next, why, who, in what role.
Well, I'm just kind of a little dumbfounded. I just think that's incredible. I know others do that too, but I also know a lot of people where that communication is hard. For whatever reason, maybe it's not a strength. Would you consider yourself like a great communicator? Is this something that you've always been good at? Or what do you think has allowed you to be able to carry on some of these, sometimes hard conversations?
Yeah. I think probably and my wife, I think would concur with this, that I have the capacity or the ability to have conversations about delicate matters, but in a matter-of-fact way where we can keep emotions minimized. And the ability to read people, if I hit a nerve and I'm on the cusp of sending somebody over the edge, you got to adjust. And so you don't do that over the phone. You don't do that over a text message. You do that face to face. You got to be able to read people. You got to see how they're reacting in real time. So part of I think what has really helped me over time was youth development, 4-H and FFA. I was fortunate to be a district and state FFA officer back in the day, and that really helped me become a better communicator. And then just observing and watching people manage others and identify things that I'm like, wow, that was pretty effective. I really liked how he did that. Or holy cow, this guy, he doesn't stand prayer. I mean, nobody's going to follow him because the people are repulsed by him. So just finding leaders that you can look up to and modeling behavior. I do read some, in terms of trying to make myself a better employer, a better person. We're a family of faith, and so that's all important to me. And you talked a little bit earlier about legacy. A family builds reputation one way or another over the course of decades. Both of my grandfathers were farmers. My dad was a farmer. I feel like our reputation is pretty solid in our neighborhood and in our communities. And one wrong move, one misstep ethically can really tarnish the family. And I'm very cognizant of that. And I think my family is quite cognizant of that as well.
Yeah, so true. I maybe just to back up, because I'd love to make sure that we're kind of on the same page here. How do you define succession planning? What does that mean to you?
I think the definition of that in my mind is first of all, you got to have a viable business, right? And we doubled our sow farm back in 2017, 2018, and that was a fairly tedious process. Not only about the business, but about what the next generation is going to do. Now, they were all too young. There was no way I could ask them for any sort of commitment to our business. But I did ask a lot of professionals. And I remember I asked our accountant specifically. And the question was, in your experience, what is the likelihood of a farm family having the next generation be involved, providing you have a viable business? And that's kind of the key factor. And so, and their response was it's pretty high. And so in 2017 and 2018, we made a pretty significant investment in our farm with the idea that we needed to have a viable business. We needed to have some economies of scale. And so, there's not much point in succession management if there's nothing to succeed to or succeed with. And so, we were fairly mindful of that when we moved forward, and it's been a blessing because now we do have room for additional people, not only from a labor standpoint, but also from a standpoint of management, utilizing their skills. And that's one of the questions that kind of comes through on the questionnaire that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But basically, we recognize each other's strengths. We also recognize each other's quirks and habits, right? I mean, we all have those things. I'm sure my kids could point out a number of things about me that are like, but we're all that way.
Yeah. Well, I love this. You call it succession management exercise, but talk to me a little bit about how did this come to be? What is it? And when did you start this?
I had an experience or heard of an experience. There was a very successful family in eastern Iowa, and they had a number of different businesses. And they had recently built a feed mill, an elevator, in a county seat town in eastern Iowa. And then the father of this family passed away unexpectedly. And come to find out, nobody in the family really had any interest in this feed mill elevator in this community. And so they ended up selling it. And it really struck me that, maybe Dad should have asked, where should we be investing capital? What part of our businesses are you most interested in being involved with, so that we can place the capital in the place that puts you in a position to want to be here and to be successful? And so that really is what sparked the construction of the instrument. So the first page of the instrument actually started 2 years ago. And basically it's 35 things that need to be done on our farm. Most of them were pig related, but we do crop farm some. And so, basically at that point, it was pretty much everything that I was doing. And so they had to rate it 1 to 5. And so the scenario, I'll just read you the scenario because it's kind of important to set it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2033. Todd and Denise are serving in an advisory role only, and you choose to be an active employee of the family businesses. Please answer by circling the corresponding number that best describes your interest in the listed activity. And that's from 1 to 5. So at the time, all 4 of our children, and we had 1 daughter-in-law that completed that 2 years ago. And it was interesting to see who had interest in what, but it also told us pretty clearly, where we kind of needed to go in the future if we wanted our children to be involved in our business.
Yeah, it's a really cool tool. Sorry, I'm looking at it on my screen here. There are so many different things listed. I think it's also kind of daunting looking at it like, oh my gosh, you do all that stuff, don't you? To just see it kind of all written out there. When you had your kids go through this, what do you think was kind of, that first time they did this? What was their response? What did they think about it?
I think they took it at face value. I don't know that they read too much into it. I think they maybe saw it kind of as a fun activity, just something that wanted dad's ideas or whatever, and it was. But I learned a lot, and so then 2 years later, so just here this summer we did it again, but we added a second page to it. So the first page remained the same, exactly the same. And the reason is because I needed to see if the kids were moving, if they were drifting in their interest. And in one case, there was significant movement in what one of our kids wanted to do. And it surprised me, to be truthful about it. But in the other three cases, they pretty well held true to what they thought 2 years previous, right? And so bear in mind, 2 years ago, our youngest one was a freshman in college, and our oldest one would have been 24. And now, the 2 years older. So those 2 years actually at that age are pretty important, because a lot of things can change in those 2 years. Now, nobody is required to come back and be involved in our operation in terms of our kids or their spouses or whatever. It's a free will, right? There's a million ways to make a living out there. You don't have to be here. And in fact, you can't be here for a couple of years after you graduate. You need to go learn something from somebody else. But if you choose to be here, we want to put you in a position or in an employment opportunity that is of most interest to you. If you're interested in it, guess what? You're most likely to be successful in it.
Did you have the spouses fill this out too?
At the time we did it the first time, Drew was the only married one in our family. So yes, she did. Now Isaac is married, and so she actually filled it out before they were married. Not that matters, right? They were engaged, and actually Josh's girlfriend also filled it out, and so now we went from 5 respondents to 7, and it was good, actually. Because we found some more people potentially, or that were going to be in our family, that had different interests. I mean, and it was actually very ironic, because one in particular, very much oriented towards common swine industry audit, oriented towards compliance, oriented towards site assessments. None of us want to do that work, right?
Yeah.
But this person does. So it's like, whoa, there's an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that too. And I mean, is there anything that, I guess, as you went through this, did anything surprise you? Did you walk away with any insights that you don't think you would have had you not really broken this down into such detail?
There was, and it surfaced early, and it was really surprising to me. Josh, our youngest, and he's animal science at Iowa State, but that surprised me when he did that, because he is our heavy equipment operator. The kid is steady, and during COVID, we had all the kids home because colleges and universities sent them home, and we had a bunch of pasture fence to build, and so that's what we did. And that kid was on a post pounder one day, I remember, and he wasn't very old at the time. He's probably 16, and he was on a post pounder driving wood posts, and we did it all day long. And the kid was as steady and effective at 5 o'clock in the afternoon as he was at 8 o'clock in the morning. But the thing that we discovered with him in particular was that, and we knew this intuitively just because of his natural interest but he shows aptitude and interest towards grain farming, as an example, or even manure hauling. That scored pretty high for him. That he thinks that we should haul our own manure as an opportunity to improve margins in our business.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, it does take so many different personalities. So this really gets more into kind of, would you say, task oriented? Have you done any assessments of personality type, or maybe they're like those strength finders or working genius, or any of those types of analysis to kind of see how they work as a team?
Not specifically as a family, but we have had different family members do different personality types. Enneagram, for example, is one that several of us have done, and I had a couple of them do it. It's probably something that we should all do. I think it would be time well spent. But the second page of our instrument actually addresses a fair amount of that in terms of life philosophy and how they look at the world.
So tell us a little bit more about that page. So, what are some examples? Do you have any examples that you might want to share of like what some of those statements might be?
Yeah, so I put this together because you need to. I mean, if you're going to work with people in a business and a family in any organization, even if you're not related, you need to have some idea of where they're coming from. And so the second page of the instrument was new this year, right? In 2025, there's 45 statements on it, and you rank the statement or you grade it from 1 to 5. 1, you're in agreement with it, or 5, you are in disagreement with it. We had a stint in our family, and it was my idea, and I don't know if it was a bad idea, but it's not an idea that was sustainable for us, and so we moved away from it. At one point when the kids were young, we had rabbits, like 90 does and 9 or 10 bucks. Whoa. And we had rented a barn down the road about a half a mile, and we were going to treat rabbit production like we treated pig production, right? We were going to have 10 litters, 9 litters every week. That really was sparked by a packing facility that was developed by a buddy of mine just north of Ames. And so they were harvesting rabbits, and they were needing to access more rabbits, and I thought that would be a good opportunity. Turns out manure management on rabbits that only includes a scoop shovel doesn't have a whole lot of attraction to even me, for that matter. So we ended up exiting the rabbit business, but we learned something from it. The reason I bring rabbits up is there's a statement in here that rabbits were a bad idea. But there's also a statement in here that I'm willing to present or pitch an idea to better utilize underutilized space. Okay, so in my mind, those two questions are connected. Mm-hmm. Rabbits weren't necessarily a bad idea, but we sometimes have underutilized space that could be utilized for something else. Somebody tell me about what you want to do, right? If you pitch me the idea, I'm all ears, because if we can, we're a business, right? And so profitability sure should be a priority. If there's a way that we can use this asset in a better way, I'm all ears.
Well, I think that's funny because of all these, I had highlighted that, like, want to talk about this one until you went right to it. But there's so many things that are so good. And as I read these, I'm like, this feels like kind of like its own assessment. Maybe you've got something here, maybe it's not the Enneagram, or maybe it's not your working genius, but it's definitely reminds me of kind of those personality profiles to kind of understand how people work or how they think. But I think there was one I was trying to remember. It was like, I may not always agree with what you think or you say, but I'll always have your back in public, or something like that. Where did that one come from? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, if you ever watch Yellowstone, I mean, that show kind of creeped me out, actually. And when I look at the family dynamic that was portrayed in that television show, it made me uncomfortable, actually. And so we can have our disagreements, right? But boy, as a family, you better have each other out in the community, especially in the business we're in, because in the fall when we haul manure, as an example, it's pretty easy to put a target on us, right? There's odor in the neighborhood, and we're responsible for it. But you better have each other's backs, not only and genuinely, right? Not just in speech, but you better have each other's backs.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think it's hard to have a thriving business without trust. mean, trust is really at the root of all of our relationships that we have. And so if you don't trust your team, it's hard to really perform at your best. So I love how all this weaves together. It is a really incredible tool. How do you think this has been helpful to you and your wife as you guys plan for your future?
It sheds light on areas where their belief system parallels ours, right? I mean, I said earlier, we're a family of faith. We're called to serve. And so that's important. And when you're called to serve, you put other people first. And so it shouldn't always be about me. Now, sometimes it needs to be about me. Sometimes it needs to be about an individual person. But generally speaking, we should be in service to each other. And I had one of our family members ask, what does it mean to be a general manager? I'm like, well, it's what I do. I'm absolutely in service every day to my employees, whether they're our own children or the other 10 employees that we have, so that they can do their job effectively and efficiently. And so it's not about us, right? There's a whole lot more going on here, and we need to be in service with each other. And so it really shed a lot of light on their basic philosophy, their core beliefs. And that's really what I wanted to achieve, right? Do we have an outlier here, or do we have someone that doesn't see the world the way we see it? And that's okay, but it's helpful if you know.
Well, I also, as I was looking at this and thinking about the different statements, it feels like it's a little bit of a indirect way of sharing some things that maybe you think are really important, right? So to me, they feel like beliefs and values in the second page that can position a farm for success. Do you think that, have you seen any kind of a change in your family's approach to how they work after doing something like this? It would be hard for me, I think, to do this and then not kind of have a different perspective when I go to work the next day. Just not, maybe not different, but just a renewed perspective or a little more oomph to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we found that the core beliefs were what we expected them to be. And so I would say no, with the family members that are employed in our operation now, which are 2 full-time, and then Isaac when he's available, I would say no, we didn't see any changes in behavior or attitude or their approach to us. And that's good. That's what we expected, because I had a pretty good idea that's where they were. This just confirmed it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess, bringing it back a little bit to kind of the future and what's down the road for you guys, as you look forward, how do you see yourself investing in your operation, or how do you see your operation changing as you move forward?
We have a definite place of emphasis now, and I think long term the direction that we will go. That likely includes, we had a gentleman approach us in 2022, and he had some apartment buildings that he wanted to 1031 exchange out of, and so he built a couple of barns that we occupy and that we lease. There is a buyout clause to that agreement, right? And so eventually either ourselves or our children have a pig feeding business called Fourth Gen Hogs LLC, where they're each 20% owners. Denise 10% owner, and I'm a 10% owner. I did tell them, though, when we started this, that you can't vote me off the island, right? Because we put up the real estate to back this thing. So, and it's hard, but it's also a great exercise in giving them the responsibility of ownership. I mean, it's like a 4-H project on steroids, because these kids really are focused in on how that business is working, how it should work. And, their timing was a little bit like ours. They got in just about a year ago, right? Pretty doom and gloom. We went to the bank with this idea, and they're like, "You want to do what?" Because the pig farmers are getting beat up and have been for several years. But we saw it as an opportunity, and there was facilities within 15, 20 miles of us that were going to be available, reputable people, good facilities. And so we started Fourth Gen Hogs LLC. So I think it continues, that particular business continues to grow. And I think that growth actually is the vehicle we use for Denise and I to get out of pig ownership over the course of the next 10-ish years and get our children into ownership. And so Uncle Sam would have his way with us if we sold out all at once. But if we can gradually exit individual barns or individual parts of our production flow and have them enter into it, that's a fairly nice segue for us to get out and them to get in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, as we wrap things up here, I'd love to end with this question. If you had a chance to address, people in the industry, not just other pork producers, but maybe people in allied industry, people who care about what we're doing here in the pork industry, what's a message that you think that they need to hear right now?
That's a difficult question, but I do believe, you can approach that from a number of ways. You can approach that from a political standpoint. And with pork producers, we have what is called the SIP investment program, right? It's voluntary checkoff. It's the primary funding mechanism for National Pork Producers Council to manage and to benefit producers through policy. That's very important. So from an industry standpoint, we need a higher level of engagement in that. The other thing we need, and probably something that I'm more comfortable with, is we need good people. We need brains. I have a high school coach that coached my kids. I did not do sports. My parents wouldn't have it. But my kids did, and pretty well, actually. So one of the coaches asked about getting the kids home and putting them to work. I'm like, Coach, I said, I need my kids' backs, yeah, to a certain point, but what I really need is their brains. And my kids are all smarter than I am. So that bodes well. We just got to continue to train them and develop them and bring them along. And in our family, we're in good shape. I'm hopeful the rest of the industry is that way too. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get pretty passionate about finding those good people and helping young people, helping the next generation even understand the opportunities that are here. I sometimes am not sure we do a good enough job of showcasing the opportunity that we have. I don't know. One of my earlier jobs with the National Junior Swine Association, when I got that program started, I still will never forget parents telling their kids, like, you don't want to be in the pork industry. And that makes me so sad that we kind of lost a bit of generation because everybody was, and I understand everybody just wants the best thing for their kids. I get that, but we kind of like lost a lot right there. And so it's really exciting to like see what you guys are doing and what you've done. Like you started in 98, really like getting your business going, and how you've kept it, not just going, but how you've allowed it to thrive and grow. And now you're bringing your kids all, back in, and they're having their own business. Like that's so exciting. But it takes those stories being shared. I think that people can hear that there are ways and there are opportunities. And you obviously love it, right? You're still here.
Yeah, I do. I mean, boy, I love it better when it's profitable.
Absolutely.
Because we went through a period of time. 08, 09 was actually our worst time by a long ways. We really struggled. We went through a significant expansion in that time as well, and that was rough. But yeah, I mean, it's challenging. I like the challenge. I'm an operations guy, so my management happens with people during the day when I'm with them, but my business management happens at 5 to 6:30 in the morning and from 5 to 6:30 in the evening, because that's just kind of how I'm wired. But I do like the challenge. It can cause me some anxiety on occasion, just the reality.
Sure. I'm not sure anything really, always if it's worth pursuing, if it's worth doing, it's not going to be easy, right? It's going to have some challenge to it, and that's what makes it also kind of fun too. And um, I guess so. What I may ask you now is if there are young people who might be listening to this, or people who aren't exactly sure what career path to take, what advice would you have for them when it comes to considering a pork industry career?
It can be so much more than just raising pigs, right? And that's one of the things that I learned in FFA. All right, FFA is an agricultural organization, but it's so much more than that, right? It's a leadership development organization. It's the premier leadership development organization. And so just because we invite you to be involved in the pork industry doesn't say that we're asking you to farm pigs, right? It may be a meat industry job. I think there's great opportunities in the protein sector. There's great opportunities in transportation, in business ownership. I mean, there's segments of our business that we could break off into little businesses of their own: transportation, feed milling, sow farm production, wean to finish production. If there was manure application business. There's tons of ways that you can make a living and thrive in the pork industry without even necessarily taking care of a pig.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, it's so great to talk to you today. I could keep going for a lot longer, I know, but I know you've got to get back out to your barn too. And I need to get back to my things. I really appreciate all of you guys jumping on and listening to us today. You can dive into more of the Pork Podcast on Farm Journal's YouTube channel, or you can listen to it anywhere that podcasts are found. I'm Jennifer Scheich, finding the story behind the story.